Our Bible word is Luke 19, verses 5 to 7. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him and said to him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house. So he made haste and came down and received him joyfully. But when they saw it, they all complained, saying, He has gone to be a guest with a man who is a sinner.
Now, it's important to know that Luke, or the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts, it has the same author. And Luke is also the longest book in the New Testament, Luke's Gospel. And together with the book of Acts, it constitutes the biggest contribution by a single author to the writings of the New Testament. And also many themes that you encounter in the Gospel of Luke, like inclusion of outsiders, the work of the Holy Spirit, etc., lays the foundation for what we also find in the book of Acts. So if you read the Gospel of Luke, remember the book of Acts. And if you read Acts, also remember the Gospel of Luke, because they are intimately connected with one another. And for the author of the Gospel, it's very important is that the time of exclusion is past. It's through Christ, through his ministry, his death and resurrection, he has opened access to salvation for everybody. The time of salvation has dawned. Everybody is welcome, or everybody is invited now to participate in the salvation. And of course, very also important for Luke is salvation history. Certain things must happen. And this is all part of God's fulfillment of his salvation. And history is salvation history. And also unique to Luke is his travel narrative. You find that in chapter 9, verses 51 to chapter 19, verse 27, where 10 chapters are devoted of Jesus' travel to Jerusalem. And this is also called the travel narrative. So Jesus travels to Jerusalem, and because Jerusalem is also the place of salvation. This is where God will accomplish salvation for all. And it's also from here where salvation will spread to all the nations. So in the Gospel of Luke, we have this movement to Jerusalem of Jesus. And in the book of Acts, we have the reversal, where this good news of Jesus is spread throughout the entire ancient world. So Jerusalem is also a main focus of salvation. Other important themes is the work of the Holy Spirit. And Jesus is empowered by the Holy Spirit. The early church apostles are empowered by the Holy Spirit. Believers, etc., on the day of Pentecost, they receive the Holy Spirit. And also it's an age of reversals. That is where those on the outside receive salvation. So there's salvation for outsiders that's also happening now. This is the age that Jesus has inaugurated. Also, as to the authorship, according to early church tradition, the author was Luke. And Luke was often a travel companion of Paul, if we also read that in the book of Acts. And Luke is also mentioned in various Pauline epistles. For example, there in Philemon 24, Paul writes, he lists people who are greeting them, or for Philemon, and in verse 24 it says, as do Mark, Aristarchus, Demas, Luke, my fellow laborers. And also in Colossians 4 verse 14, Paul says, Luke, the beloved physician, and Demas greet you. So according to early church tradition, the author of this Gospel of Luke and also the book of Acts is this Luke that Paul refers to, the beloved physician. So if it's this Luke, we cannot be sure, or somebody else or another figure, but it's an early Christian tradition that was written by this Luke, this fellow traveler and companion of Paul. And he was probably a Gentile, but very learned person, because he writes some of the finest Greek in the New Testament. Or maybe it was a Hellenized Jew. In other words, a Jew that was very open to Gentile customs, etc., or engaging with Gentiles. And most scholars will date the Gospel of Luke to the 70s or 80s AD. And where it was written, we cannot say. But we know it was written for a Theophilus. If you go to the beginning of the Gospel and also to the beginning of the book of Acts, Luke specifically addresses this Theophilus. And this Theophilus was probably a sponsor of his project, so that he could have the leisure and the tools, the paper, etc., to write this Gospel. So that's the context for the Gospel of Luke.